Hello, everybody. It's me again. I'm here to welcome you to our fourth annual Student Success and Career Fair for 2018. Today, I'm going to talk to you about not pulling your hair out, and I'm going to share some study tips for taking those quizzes and exams. So I hope you enjoy this presentation. And if you have any questions as I'm speaking, please just jot those down in the questions box. I'll either answer them as I'm going through the presentation, or I'll save them until the end. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. So here's a little bit about me. I've been a student. I am definitely a lifelong learner. I have quite a few degrees in the field of early childhood, as well as early childhood education, administration, and leadership for higher education. And I was, until just recently, still in school, seeking some courses in organizational and industrial psychology. I took a break from that when I was promoted to associate dean in January, but I do hope to go back in the future. As far as higher education, I've been working in higher education for about 13 years now. Truly have enjoyed my journey as an educator, really helping and motivating students as they're studying for those exams and as they're a little stressed out, trying to be their cheerleader as well as their support system. Because I know as a student myself how difficult it can be when there's so many things going on in life, between work and school, family and friends, and our careers, right? It makes it difficult sometimes. So really knowing that you can have family and friends and instructors or student care or student success representatives that you can reach out to certainly does make a big, big difference. And as far as my career, I've been an educator. As I shared earlier, I worked in early care and education for 28 years. In that time, I had many school-age children in my school-age program as well. So I was working with them on study tips to help them along the way as they were in elementary school up through from kindergarten through 6th grade. So my child care center served children 6 weeks through 6th grade. So quite a big age span. I loved the infants and toddlers, and then I would jump right over to the school-age children. So between those, I love preschool children too, don't get me wrong, but I never really worked in a preschool classroom, even though I had a preschool classroom. Most of my work was with infants, toddlers, and with our school-age children. So that's just a little bit about my career. And those of you new to GoToWebinar, when you logged in, you saw a control panel that looked a little bit like this. If you click on that red box with the white arrow, that's either going to expand or collapse your control panel. And from there, you'll be able to type in any questions. Your certificate of attendance is listed there under the handout, so you can download that and you'll have a copy of that. Or you can wait and get a copy of that 1 hour from now when I send you your email confirmation thanking you for joining me. If for whatever reason you lose me on audio, and I might lose you because it is raining really, really badly in Rhode Island, if I lose you, I will call back in. So there's a telephone number if you can't hear me that you can call in through, so you'll be able to hear me. The next thing I want to do is I just want to start with a quick poll to find out who you are. Are you a Penn Foster student? Are you a guest? Are you a Penn Foster alumni? A partner? We have some B2B partners. Or are you a Penn Foster employee? It's always nice to see who's joining us. We've got 96% of you are students, 2% guests, and 2% alumni. Excellent. Thank you so much for taking the time to share. I'm going to close out that poll now and continue on with my presentation. So we've got some goals and objectives for this presentation today. Do you struggle with multiple choice exams? Does studying cause you to stress out and make you want to pull your hair out? I know I've gotten that way sometimes, right? If so, I invited you to join me to learn tips and strategies for stress-free studying, test-free studying. Study tips are transferable. You'll take them. You're going to take those study tips to your classroom. You're going to take those to your job in the future. Okay, let me hide that poll. I'm sorry that that is still showing. I thought I closed that out. And now let me hide that. And now you should see my next screen. And it doesn't look like it's advancing. Let me see. It should be on my screen. Can you see my screen, or are you still seeing the poll? Looks like the poll is still showing. Let me see what I can do. It says it's closed. And I've shared it already. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to log out and log back in. Don't go anywhere. Excellent. It looks like it worked. So the skills that you're going to learn as you're learning study tips are going to really assist you as you work in your career, because you're going to have to do some problem solving when you get to work, right? We work with groups. We work through challenging situations. We need to be organized and dedicated. We need to know how to prioritize and be self-disciplined. You need to work on those organization skills and those time management skills. So it takes the same types of skills. So if you can learn those skills when you're in school, you're going to be off to a wonderful start once you start that career of yours, or you advance within your career. So the goals for this session are to identify a personal approach to studying and learning, to determine ways to develop study skills, to increase awareness of how to study and a way to work for you, and to learn the connection between education expertise and the skills that you need in the workforce. So why does studying for exams seem like a challenging task? It can be so challenging, can it? You can be overwhelmed when you study for an entire course worth of materials for a test. The words final exam, practice exam tend to frighten many of us because we know that this tends to be materials that we covered all term long, right? Some of you might go through your courses in 4 to 6 weeks or 10 weeks, 10 to 12 weeks, where others of you might take 2 or 3 months, right? Sometimes even more. So if you've got to reflect back to that time when you first started that program, when you're taking those finals, it can be a little overwhelming. So really important that you take notes, be detailed and organized as you're taking notes, okay? We know that those final exams tend to have a higher percentage of our grade. They tend to be 33% of our grade, depending on which program or which course you're in. So a higher percentage of your grade. So really important that you take those items seriously. Here's just a few general study tips that I like to offer to students and guests. I always recommend that you begin studying no less than 30 minutes or 60 minutes after a meal. Okay, you don't want to study when you're hungry, and you don't want to study when you're too full, because if you study when you're hungry or too full, you're just not going to be feeling up to it. You're going to be thinking about, wow, I'm hungry, right? I'm hangry, I need to eat, or I'm so full, I can't concentrate. So about 30 to 60 minutes after a meal is the ideal time to study. They also say that we should never study within 30 minutes before going to bed, okay? Because maybe it's going to wire us. Maybe we're too tired, okay? We're not going to give it the attention that it needs because we're focusing on going to bed. Another thing that you should do is you should prioritize. Make a list of what you need to study and try your best to stick to that list, okay? So if you're studying for a proctored exam, maybe you want to study on lesson 1 today, lesson 2 tomorrow, lesson 3 the next day, so on and so forth, okay? So make a list and do your best to prioritize. Tomorrow, if you studied lesson 1 today, tomorrow you should quickly review lesson 1 before jumping on to lesson 2. See what you know, see what you retained before jumping on to the next lesson and next set of materials. They also say that you should study no more than 45 to 60 minutes at a stretch. Okay, you're going to hear me later on say, I think 30 to 60 minutes. Everyone you talk to is going to say something a little bit different. So my high recommendation to you is to study for the amount of time that you know you can stay focused, okay? I know there's some nights that I can study for hours upon hours and retain everything that I've studied. And then there's other nights that I study for 5 or 10 minutes and I say to myself, what did I just read? What did I just study? And I'm sure that that happens to many of you as well. When there's a lot on our mind, we're not really paying attention to what we're studying. We're reading just the words instead of the sentences and paragraphs and content, right? And I think that happens to all of us. So 45 to 60 minutes, unless if you know that you're still making some nice, strong connections, then you can continue on. But if you think you're not making strong connections, take a break. Maybe take some notes, highlight things, take a walk. I take a walk down to my kitchen. I grab myself a glass of water. I go back into my office, and then I'm able to sometimes refocus just from taking a 5-minute walk. Sometimes does the trick. And another thing that they say is don't drastically reduce your sleep. Don't eliminate your exercise. Don't overeat. Do what you normally do, those everyday habits that you have, even when you're studying for an exam, continue to do it because that's part of your schedule. And if you try to break that schedule, it might hurt you more than it's going to help you. It's also very, very important that you create the right environment for studying, right? You need to decide where you're going to study. That environment needs to be comfortable, somewhere maybe where you're free from distractions. I know my children are both in school and they study with headphones and soft music. I couldn't do that. I need complete silence, okay? My children can study in front of the TV. They can study with headphones in their ears, listening to music. We're all so different. Find out what works for you, okay? Try to use this space as yours. When I was in school and I was studying, I'd have a note on my office studying. Right now there's a note on my office in a webinar because my son's going to be popping in any minute. So he knows that I'm in a webinar and not to disturb me. Another thing that I recommend is that you keep that study place organized. Everything that you need to know, that you need to have, okay? If you need the internet connection, make sure you have that. If you use sticky notes, pen, paper, pads, whatever it is that you use when you are studying, if you're taking a math class and have that calculator handy, have everything you need, know where everything is. The worst thing is having to run around the house looking for that textbook. Where did I put that last, right? Especially when you only have 45 minutes to an hour to study. If you've got something else that you want to do, you want to make sure that your space is organized. Get everything that you need before you sit down, okay? Definitely going to assist you. Make sure your furniture is comfortable. The temperature in your room is comfortable. I know today I had to turn the heat up before getting up and going to work. I work from home, so I had to turn the heat up because it was a little chilly in here this morning. I needed to make sure I was comfortable in order to be able to focus today without sitting here saying, I'm freezing, and thinking about that all day. The value of a study schedule. Having a study schedule is the ideal way to go, okay? In your Penn Foster classes, you have study planner apps. I highly recommend that you take advantage of those study planner apps. If you don't, I recommend that you at least use a calendar. Write down, block off times of the day or times of the week that studying is going to work for you. You might have to change those dates. You might have to, life gets in the way, right? You might fall behind. When I was in school, I used to study every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Those were my study days. If for whatever reason I couldn't do it Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, I could do it Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday instead, then that's what I did. I needed to be flexible enough with my life in order to get it done. But I made sure as soon as I knew that I couldn't do it on Saturday, that I would block off time on Sunday to do my studies. So take part in creating a schedule. Let your family and friends know that you're using this schedule so they can look at it. So they know when you're busy, okay? There's some key effective ways to study as well. I ask that you try to obtain an exam outline for each of your courses, including what material can be covered. What the length of that exam is, you can call us and say, you know what, how many questions are on that exam? Can you tell me that? We're not going to tell you exactly what content's on there, but we might be able to tell you, yes, this exam has 4 multiple choice exams, 3 short essays, and 2 one-page essays. Okay, so we'll be able to share that type of information with you. And typically the information that's on your examinations are information that we're asking you to test yourself on. The information that's in your study guide that we've highlighted there as well as in your textbook, that's a great place to start. Complete all of the lessons. Some of you might say, oh, these self-checks, I don't need to take those. They're not graded. I want to tell you, those self-checks are put into your classroom because we know that they're going to create many opportunities for success for you. Okay, we don't put them in there just to waste time. We're putting them in there because it's going to help you either with that course or in your career. You really have to always realistically plan for the amount of time that you need to study that material. If you plan on taking that test next Tuesday and next Tuesday comes along and you say, I need more time, know that those due dates are not set in stone, okay? If it's a proctored exam, you'll definitely have to reach out to the proctor if you're doing a face-to-face proctor and let him or her know that you need to change the date. But if there's any online tests, you can just change that date on your own by clicking on your study planner app or by just logging in when you can and doing it at that time. You also need to decide which previous commitments might need to go on hold while you're studying, right? You might have to say no to some of your friends and family if they're asking you to go out to the movies again or going out to eat. You know what? I've got a lot of studying to do. Can you cook dinner instead? And I'll take 20 minutes or a half hour to go out and to eat with you at the kitchen table. But I don't have 2 hours to go out to dinner tonight. And you know what? If they know it's for your studying and for your career and your future, and they know how important that is to you, I'm hopeful that you'll be able to get them on your side. Lots of strategies for test taking and for studying. The first thing is to survey. I recommend that you survey your textbook. I do this every time I'm taking a new class. I flip through that textbook. I look to see what's important. I look at the headers. I look at the study unit or the syllabus, whatever it is, depending on where I'm going to school, to see what's going to be covered. From there, I question myself. I ask my questions. What do I know? What do I need to know? Why do I need to know this? Okay. What do I already know? Where might I struggle as I'm reading this? If I'm taking an early childhood class with 28 years experience in the field, usually I don't have too many struggles. But when I was taking my higher education program, it was a little outside of my comfort zone. And now my organizational psychology classes that I'm taking, again, a little outside of my comfort zone. That's why I didn't mind taking a break, but I will get back to that. I figured I'd take a break for my first 6 months in my new position, and then I'll be back to that. But question yourself, where do you think you're going to need to study a little bit more? Okay. And then read. Actively read over the materials. Be alert. Okay. Pay attention to the main ideas, to those bolded terms, to the key understandings and details. Read that information thoroughly with the purpose of finding answers to the questions that you have asked yourself. Why do I need this? What is this going to help me with, right? So those questions that you asked yourself, try to answer those questions as you're reading. Sometimes you might have to read things twice. Another thing to do is to recite, recalling, and orally reciting or writing down some of the information that you have learned is a nice way to make a stronger connection to the material. I also do my best whenever I possibly can is to connect whatever it is that I'm learning about to a real life experience, okay? So if you're working in the field or you can connect it or relate it to something, recite that. Okay, recite, wow, or write it down. Reminds me of when, and write down what it reminds you of. That way there you have that connection. So when you're studying again, you can say, oh yeah, I remember that. It reminded me of when XYZ, okay? And the last thing is to review. You want to reread, summarize to yourself, look over those key points, test yourself, do those self-checks, okay? Look at those headings, those subheadings, look at your text, answer those questions and answers, look at any additional notes that you have put together. If you're still challenged, you might want to reread. Another thing that I have, it's not on this slide, but YouTube videos. Ask questions of your instructor if it's something that you do not make a connection to. Pick up the phone, call us, or email us, chat with us, or look through YouTube for a credible source, maybe a national organization, an author of your textbook, somebody who is credible in the field. Look for a YouTube video from them that's going to explain the information that you have read. And sometimes they'll share personal connections to allow you to make a stronger connection to the content. So I always find that to be very, very helpful when I am studying. More proven strategies, as I shared, getting organized, right? Putting time into organizing your notes, organizing your environment, really, really important. Reading with a purpose, not just glossing over that material. That you might want to do when you first originally look at the material, but after that, you're reading with a purpose. You're reading those words, which are forming sentences and paragraphs and chapters. Okay, read those words, know what they are saying, take notes, ask questions. Give yourself a purpose for reading. Get those main ideas out there on the table. Question yourself on the points from your notes, from your assignments, or from the chapters that you're reviewing. What does this mean? Why do I need to know this? Why did the author think this is important? And it's listed in my study guide. So Penn Foster thinks it's important as well for me to have this for my degree or my credential. Try to extract those important details. Typically, you can see what they are because they're bold printed, right? So try to extract that. Take notes. You might want to bold your notes. You might want to underline them. You might want to use sticky notes. I can't highlight in a textbook because it drives me crazy. It absolutely drives me crazy. If I'm going to study after and there's highlights in there, all I focus on is the highlights. So instead, I put sticky pages, sticky notes with arrows pointing to where I think important information is. And then if I find out that, you know what, that's not what I'm looking for later on, all I have to do is move that sticky note with that arrow to a different portion. You can outline in your textbooks, study guides, and take notes, okay? Remember, do what works for you. We're all so different. And that's what makes life so real, right? It makes us so unique because we're all so different. What works for you might not work for me. And what works for me might not work for you. So read that outline, reread that outline, and then focus on those key points to allow you success when taking those examinations. Concentration. There's problems for concentration, right? There might be times when you're studying for exams and your mind is wandering. You're just all over the place. Maybe you have worries. Maybe life just wasn't easy today. Maybe the football game or the hockey game or the baseball game is on and your spouse is yelling at the TV, right? Maybe the baby's crying or your grandma, your mom's asking for help. They need help, and maybe you're bored. Maybe it's a general education course you really don't want to take, but you've got to take it, so you might be bored. So what strategies can you use when this happens? You've got to maybe find a place where you can study without distractions. Tell yourself, now is when I must study, or take a break and come back later if you can, right? Try to stick to your routine. Be realistic, okay? So you can be effective studier. There's nothing worse than taking an hour to study when you're really not focused, because it's kind of a waste of an hour, right? If you're really not focused, you're better off taking that hour to do something else and coming back at a later time when that studying is going to be purposeful. You want to change your study topics every couple of hours. So let's say you have all day Saturday, you're planning on studying because you want to take a quiz or an exam on Sunday. So you're studying all day Saturday. If you go in order, you might become bored. You might become frustrated. I tend to jump around, study something that I really like, something that I'm really passionate about, and then struggle something that I might be struggling with. And then back to something that I really like and I'm passionate about to something that I'm struggling with. So I go back and forth. That way then when I'm studying something that I'm passionate about, it allows me to take a few deep breaths, right? It's not just all this, I don't want to study this. And I don't feel that way because I'm jumping back and forth. Vary your study activities. Don't try to study the same way for more than an hour or so. I see a nice tip from Angela. She says that she uses Quizlet, and it's really helped her a lot to learn materials. And Quizlet is a wonderful, wonderful tool. You can either create your own quiz on Quizlet, or you can search by author and textbook name. Another student may have, or instructor may have created those quizzes, and you might be able to take those. Okay, you can do crossword puzzles with Quizlets. You can do multiple choice exams. You can do flashcards. So lots of different games and things that you can do with Quizlet. So it can be a real fun, neat way to study. You also want to take regularly scheduled breaks when you're studying. You don't want to sit down for too long of a period of time because your mind will wander, right? And give yourself rewards even for those small achievements. So if you're studying and you're planning for studying for 5 hours today, get up, walk around, okay? If you need to go out and run out and buy yourself a coffee from Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks, if that's going to keep you going, do it. Do it, or make yourself a cup of coffee, right? Take a little bit of a break every now and then to really re-energize yourself. Strategies that might not work, and remember, everybody's different. These might work for you, but reading information out loud without writing it down. Sometimes I can read information and not write it down and retain everything. Other times I need to at least take bullet points. Sometimes I need to take detailed notes. Glossing over your notes without proving you know it by teaching someone else or by writing it down might not help you. A neat thing to do is if you're working in the field and you're learning something, go to work and tell your coworkers what you learned about, what you read about, what you talked about in class. They're going to benefit from it because you're working in the same field, and as you're sharing with them, you're making a stronger connection. Highlighting might not work for you because it might make your eyes automatically focus back to those areas. Studying with somebody else. Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it gets you into different conversations and now you're off focus, right? But if you're studying with somebody who is just as committed and focused as you are, then that could work perfectly for you. Reviewing the material just one time. For the average person, that doesn't work. The average person needs to review material more than once. And staying up really late or pulling an all-nighter, that might not work either. I always recommend that if you're writing a paper and you're done that paper, don't upload it today. If you worked on writing a paper for 3 or 4 hours today, don't upload it today. Save it. Read it tomorrow morning with a fresh set of eyes and read it out loud so you can find out if it still sounds okay. Because when we're tired and we've been working on our papers, we tend to read what we think we wrote. We tend to skip words. But if you're doing it the next day when you've got a fresh mind, you're going to maybe catch some things that you have missed. Okay, so that's something that I always recommend, and I think that always works for me. When taking objective exams, and those would be your multiple choice exams, okay, you want to quickly survey the entire exam. You want to budget your time, read over each question, answer the easy questions first. There's going to be some questions that you're going to know without a doubt it's the right answer. Pay attention to keywords in those sentences and in the questions. You might want to circle questions or highlight questions, or just on a sticky note, write down the questions that you may have had difficulty with that you might have to go back and look up the answer. For multiple choice exams, read each option separately and determine whether each statement is true or false. And I always recommend that whenever possible, you leave yourself at least 10 to 15 minutes at the end of each exam so you can review those questions one more time, okay? If your exam's an open book examination, a great thing to do is use the index or the glossary to help you to find those answers. So you're not skimming through that book all over the place. Just go straight to the index, straight to the glossary, and find those answers to assist you. When you have anxiety, it can be poor coping skills, right? That stress that takes place before the exam, or a strong emotional reaction that causes you fear. My daughter has test anxiety. If she has a test that's 4 or 5 pages long, she's destined to perform badly. If she looks at 1 page at a time, she's going to do much, much better. So even though I say skim through the entire exam, it's really important that you know what works for you, okay? My daughter can't skim through the whole exam. It's going to overwhelm her. Instead, she looks at 1 page at a time. 1 page at a time, and that's what works for her and the anxiety that she gets from taking examinations. When you're doing your subjective exams, those are your written examinations, make sure you complete all the initial preparation allowed. Sometimes you'll have some videos in your class or open office hours. Please try to attend those. Ask questions if you have any. Read over the entire exam. Budget the amount of time that you need. Take pieces in bite-sized pieces. If you're doing a paper that's 1,500 words and it's got 3 parts, you might want to do part 1 today, part 2 tomorrow, and part 3 the next day. Or part 1 this morning, part 2 this afternoon, and part 3 this evening. Okay? Try to break it up. Read over what you wrote before submitting it. I always start out with an outline, and those outlines become headers in my papers. That way there I know that I'm including information on each item that my instructor is looking for. Once again, I pay attention to those keywords, make sure I use some of those keywords. I make sure that if I'm sharing lots of personal opinions, that I always support them with credible sources. So I'll either use the library for the school that I'm attending, or my textbook, or some other resources that I might have on my home bookshelf to assist me. You always want to start with an introduction and a conclusion. What are you writing about? This is not only going to help your instructor to stay on track, but it's also going to help you in 3, 6, 9, 12 months from now when you're looking at this paper or putting it in your portfolio and saying, what was this paper about? What class did I write that for? If you have an opening paragraph, it's going to highlight what the paper is about. And then always, always, always end with a conclusion. What did you learn in that paper? Okay, so your conclusion is very similar to the opening paragraph. The opening paragraph's what you're going to be writing about, and your conclusion is what you did write about and what you learned. Answer all the questions. Again, read through it, hopefully the next day, if not at least several hours later, to look for spelling errors, grammar mistakes, and clarity. You know, sometimes we're writing things and we say, oh no, and we change sentences or paragraphs around and it's making sense right then and there. But when we go back later on, it might not make sense anymore. So really important that you take the time to do that. Exam anxiety symptoms. Students have exam anxiety, which can cause memory blocks, right? They're blanking out on what it is that they're studying. They have a fear of taking tests, and sometimes that fear of taking tests makes it even worse to take that test, right, than anything else. Physical symptoms such as a rapid heart rate, shortness of breath, sweating, maybe a cold. If you're not feeling well, can you wait until tomorrow to take that test instead, right? Sometimes you're better off waiting. Sometimes you have a lower reading comprehension. Maybe you don't always understand what you read. So that can cause you some anxiety too. If that's the case, take your time, read it twice, read it out loud. Think about it before jumping in and answering the question. And sometimes it's poor attention to detail or poor attention and the inability to concentrate. So when you know what your downfalls are, what those anxiety symptoms that you have, knowing them is the best way to identifying how to turn those around, right? Focus on what you know and how you know you can study in order to be successful in doing so. Be prepared. I always recommend setting up a study schedule at least a week to 2 weeks before your examination, a week to 2 weeks before you're going to do a paper, making sure everything's in place. Sleep well. Make sure that you've got a good night's sleep, that you ate well, that you are ready for that examination when the day comes. You don't want to drink more caffeine or eat more sugar or less caffeine or less sugar than you normally do. Try to stable your diet, okay? Whatever you normally eat, normally drink, try to be the same, because your blood sugar could have something to do with whether you're able to focus on that examination. And another tip is to learn relaxed breathing. You know, sometimes you have to count to 10. Take deep breaths, right? Oh, wow, this is a real difficult question. What do I do? I put my head in my hand and I take 4 or 5 deep breaths and then I read it again. And sometimes it was just that I didn't understand what the question was. And just taking those 5 or 10 deep breaths, I'm able to read it again and say, oh, I think I know what they're talking about. I think I know what they're looking for now. Okay, so you might want to try doing something like that. More tips. I know earlier I said 30 to 60 minutes for studying. This slide says 1 to 2 hours before bedtime instead of 30 minutes before bedtime. Whatever works for you, okay? I know when I'm in school, I take my textbooks to bed with me. I end up dozing off with my textbook on my lap, and sometimes I have to go backwards and read some things over again. So I can't say I practice this. I'm more the 30-minute before than the 1 to 2 hours before. Remember to review those main themes. Really important that you do that. Have a plan before the exam. And aim to do your best. Okay, aim to do your best. Ronnie's asking a question. Do you have a certain amount of time to complete an exam once you start it? Your multiple choice exams, you typically have an hour for them. And your proctored exams, typically 1 hour for them. Your written exams typically are open-ended, so you can submit those anytime while you're in the course. David, yes, I probably will be doing this webinar again in the future. It tends to be a very popular webinar. It has been recorded as well, or it is being recorded as well, so you can review it at a later time if you would like. So the day of the exam, wake up early, especially if you're going for a proctored exam, right? Wake up early so you can get ready at a leisurely pace, especially if you're going to the library or you're meeting somebody in their office. Maybe you've never been there before. You don't want to be nervous driving there, right? Driving into the city. So you might want to wake up early, enjoy your breakfast, look through stuff one last time before you go for your examination. Another thing, take that textbook with you or your notebook, depending on if it's an open notebook, open textbook. Every exam's a little bit different. Take that with you. If you have an open textbook course, try not to use it if you know the answers. But when you don't, or when you're checking your answers, definitely pull that out. You don't want to spend all your time looking for the answers if you know the answers. You want to focus looking for the answers for those answers that you're not 100% sure on. Stay away from other stressed students who might be worried about that exam. So if you have friends or colleagues or coworkers that are taking the same exam as you, or you're on social media and you have somebody who's complaining or nervous about an exam that you're not nervous about, try to distance yourself from that person because you don't want their anxiety and nerves to get in your way, right? Admit to yourself that you might not know all the answers. I might not know all the answers, but I'm going to do the best that I can. Okay. And I'm going to look up, if it's an open book exam, the answers that I don't know. So start with the answers that you know, because you only have an hour for those proctored exams. Get all those done, and then go back to the ones that you're questioning. And try the memory dump strategy. If you're doing an essay, you've got an essay for your proctored examination, and you don't know everything. You really know you don't know everything. You know you're not going to get full credit, but you know some of the stuff. Write down what you know, okay? Getting partial credit is better than skipping it and getting no credit at all, right? So get that that partial credit. You might want to start with making an outline, even on a proctored exam, and go that way. If you have a condition that it's hard to study, you might, depending on what your condition is, you might be able to apply for an ADA. That's an accommodation to give you longer times for studying. So if you think you may need an ADA, please reach out to Student Services or your instructors, and we will give you the form to apply for an ADA. You'll have to have your doctor sign off on it, sharing what the situation is, what they recommend for you. And many students can be successful just by adding an extra 30 minutes to their proctored examinations because they have ADHD or some type of learning disability or anxiety, test anxiety. If you can get a note from your doctor, we will award you that extra time, okay? So I want to do just a quick review. Remember, studying is an important component about being prepared for exams. So you really want to make sure that you're studying. Any sort of studying is or can be stressful, right? But there's ways to manage that stress, just taking your time. Don't approach studying. Your approach to studying is going to vary depending on the subject matter in which you're studying. Some of them you might not have to study for at all, right? If it's within your major, you might know it because you live it every day. If it's within your career, and your major, you might live it every day and you might know it. Others you're going to take longer to study for. The key to effective studying is all about planning. It's a good idea to start right away, right when you start that lesson, that chapter, that course. Start studying. Don't be afraid to ask your instructors for help. And then lastly, I just love the two photos there. Don't pull your hair out, right? Don't pull your hair out. It's going to hurt and it's not going to be worth it. So I know when I'm studying, I don't pull my hair out, but I twirl my hair. And I don't have very much hair, but I'll sit there and I'll twirl and twirl my hair as I'm studying or reading something. Yeah, those are the best cartoon graphics that I could have ever found for this presentation. So that's just my quick summary. Does anyone have any questions at all before I let you go? Excellent. I'm glad you enjoyed this session. My pleasure. The difference between this one and the last one is I had time to prepare this one. I didn't prepare it at midnight last night. I did it a couple of weeks ago. I actually presented it a while back and edited it a little bit. So my next thing is to ask you if anyone's going to graduation. We have graduation coming up in June of 2018, June 2nd to be exact, in Pennsylvania, Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, at Mohegan Sun. You can register for graduation at www.pennforester.edu/graduation. If you have any questions, you can email us or our social media team about tickets or anything like that, and they will be able to assist you in getting those. You can email them at social@pennforester.edu, and they'll be there to answer any questions. Oh, graduation is just so rewarding. It's a wonderful, wonderful time. I tend to go to graduation every year. Unfortunately, I will not be there this year in June. So those of you walking across the stage in June, I will be viewing it, but I will not be there. I'm actually going to be on vacation, and I'm coming home the next day. So kind of disappointing, but I booked my vacation before I knew when the graduation was going to be. Yes, online students can graduate there physically. Absolutely, you can make the arrangements to either fly or drive into Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. We have some hotels that are offering discounts for us. You can get your cap and gown and you can walk right across the stage, or you can watch it virtually from your home. So lots of different ways for you to do it. And like I said, I won't be there. So the next day when I get home on Sunday, I know I'll be watching it to see what happened and to see how many people I knew that walked across the stage. Where do you go for the live video? It should be published really, really soon. I think last year they did a Facebook Live event. Other times they've done different forms of media that they've used. So I'm sure you'll be hearing about that really, really soon. It doesn't matter if you can't afford to go to graduation, you do not have to, okay? No matter if you go to graduation or not, your diploma will be mailed to you at the address that we have for you on file. But you can come and you can take your family. There is no limit to the amount of guests that you can bring because Mohegan Sun is very, very large. So no limits to the amount of guests that you can bring this year, which is exciting. We're hoping to have a bigger, better graduation than ever before this year. So really disappointing that I can't be there. How many times can you take an exam? You can take an exam, multiple choice exams, you can take twice. Whether you pass the exam or not, you can take it again. If it's a written exam, you can only take it if you failed it the first time. Okay, great question. Self-review quizzes you can take over and over and over again. So if they're not graded, you can take those over again. I want to thank you all so much for joining me. An hour from now, you're going to receive an email from me. From there, you'll have a link to a survey. Let me know what you thought of this presentation today. There's going to be a link to register for some additional sessions. If you want to continue your discussion, you can continue it on social media, hashtagging SSCF, that's Student Success and Career Fair 18. And right now, you can either go to the handout section and download your certificate, or if you wish, you can wait until you get that in the email. You'll get it. You'll be able to print it out, write your name on it, and do whatever it is you want to do with your certificate. Okay. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining me. I loved all the comments that you shared with me today. I didn't see too many questions. I believe I answered them as I moved forward. But if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. If you fail the retake multiple choice exams, you only have 2 opportunities to take that, okay? So make sure that you have studied, you're prepared. Most of your multiple choice exams should be open book. depending on which program you're in. I believe they're all open book. So take your time and you should be fine. Well, everybody, thank you so much. I am going to let you all log off so you can get ready for your next presentation. And I look forward to presenting to you again, I think tomorrow. Tomorrow I have another presentation. So I look forward to talking with you then. I'll be talking about time management tomorrow. So another exciting topic. I will see some of you there. Have a great day, everybody.